Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming to our one and only Python map automation presentation. My name is Jeff Barrett. I'm based out of Olympia, Washington. I work on the layout team and obviously the ArcPy.MP team. With me here today is Jeff Molds, and we're going to go back and forth and show you some new stuff. And in the back of the room, trying to hide herself, is Tendermill, who is our newest member to the team. She just started, and she's our new developer, and she's already fixing bugs and working on new stuff for 2.4. So thank you for coming, Tendermill. What we're going to talk about today is ArcPy.MP and some of the things, some of the new capabilities that we've added. And then we want to showcase some of the new sim development that we briefly talked about during the plenary, which is really going to change your capabilities. You're going to have access to so much more stuff because you guys have been asking us for more and more capabilities, and the sim is the easiest way to give you just about everything you would ever want. So we'll spend a little bit of time on that because really we want to teach you resources so that you can leave here and know where to look to get information. And we also, especially this crowd, this conference, we want you to have a good sense of what's coming. So we have a shortened URL that we use all the time. If you kind of enter this in, it'll bring you to our ArcPy mapping ArcGIS online page where you can download all sorts of tips and tricks and snippets of code and mini applications which kind of really help you get a good sense of the different types of things that you can do with ArcPy.MP. The other thing I want to remind you of is how many of you are still working with ArcPy mapping in ArcMap and haven't moved to Pro? Okay. So, you know, the biggest struggle with ArcPy mapping and moving to Pro is that, you know, we've always bragged that Python just always works, right? All your functions will just always continue to work, and that wasn't the case for ArcPy mapping, unfortunately. I mean, we went from an MXD-based single layout, always a single layout kind of document, into this new multi-layout project that can have many views and many layouts and many things. So the architecture just basically changed. So if you're migrating from ArcMap to Pro, your code isn't just going to work. But I can tell you the logic, even the terminology, it's all the same. It's just you don't have a data frame object anymore, right? You have a map and a camera and a map frame, and you know, 3 things instead of 1 thing. So you have a project instead of a document. So there's a great help topic that goes through this and explains all the different types of changes that we made. And really, if you're going to make that migration, I'd really suggest that you spend some time looking at those changes. It's very, very important, and there's a lot of stuff. So I'm going to stop now, and I'm going to let Jeff show some current stuff, and then I'll come back. Number 3.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jeff. My name is also Jeff. I'm Jeff Molds. I'm the other half of Jeff Squared. I guess I'm the square one. And I'm going to show you a mapbook demo to highlight some new functionality in ArcPy and ArcGIS Pro. So many of the things I'm going to show you could also be used in workflows other than mapbooks. So first off, what is a mapbook? Well, as you can see from the screenshot here, at its most basic, it's a collection of map series pages, usually a multi-page PDF. In the demo I'm going to show in a moment, I'm going to create a map book of James Bond movie locations. And the map series class exposes some of the properties of the map series that you have authored in your project, as well as the ability to export the map series to PDF. You can see a little snippet of how to access the map series on the slide here. And since Pro supports multiple layouts, each layout could have its own independent map series. And ArcPy.MP also has PDF functions to create and manage PDFs. So to make your map series a true map book, you could add stuff like a title page at the beginning or a report at the end. And something new at version 2.3 is reports. And this is new in the UI and in ArcPy. Now, prior to version 2.3, there wasn't any reporting functionality out of the box like there was in ArcMap. And you could access reports that are in a project or report templates on disk. And that is shown in the snippet here. And the report class also has a set of properties that I could change. For example, pointing the report to a different layer or setting a definition query. And I could also export the report to a PDF. So let's just take a quick look at reports in ArcGIS Pro. So this is the project that I'm going to use in my demo. And I could go to the catalog window here, and now we have reports node. And in this project, I just have one report. You know, of course, you can have as many as you wanted. And I'll just open up this. And this is the report layout. And so I'm going to use ArcPy to access this report. A couple of words about using dynamic elements, dynamic layout elements in Pro. Now, ArcPy mapping in version 10.x, we would often write complicated scripts to emulate dynamic behavior, for example, dynamic tables and charts. So before I show you the Python script, let's look at some of these dynamic layout elements that are in the ArcGIS Pro UI that we could take advantage of in Python. So knowing that these exist can save you a ton of time instead of reinventing the wheel with Python. So I'm going to go back to my project and back to my layout. And first off, you can see that I have map series enabled on this layout. So as I go from page to page, you can see that all sorts of stuff dynamically changes. So extent indicators, grids, legends, tables, texts, and charts will all react to changes in the map series page. And you could use these dynamic elements not only in map series workflows, but also if your map changes extent, or if it gets filtered by a query, or filtered by the time and range slider. Now, for example, if I look at this dynamic table specifically and go to its properties, you can see that for this layer, I'm filtering it based on the map series. Same with the chart. It also has a map series filter. And let's look at these movie quotes here, this text. So this is using dynamic table attributes. And dynamic table attributes are similar to dynamic tables, but they're a little bit more fine-grained. And they allow you to display attributes from any layer as dynamic text on the layout. And the way you set that up is, if I look at the properties here, so for this map frame and this layer, filter based on the map series, and show me this field, and if there's more than one record return, which there are in my case, separate each value with a line break. And let's look at this dynamic text element here really quick. So this is another type of dynamic text called table statistics. And the way this works is, again, for a particular layer, filter on the map series, and then show me this statistic. So in my case, it's just count for this field. And let's look at the grid really quick as well. So the grid is this set of labels and ticks around these two edges of my map frame. And you can see in the grid properties, I have this value here to automatically adjust. So you can see that when I change my map series page, so for example, this is a 2-degree interval. If I go to the Netherlands here, it automatically changes to a 30-minute interval. And I'll show you some of the components to the grids that you could add to your map frames. So you could have grid lines, ticks, labels, corner labels, interior labels, intersection points or crosshairs, and you see I'm using those in my map frame as well. And when I created this grid, I created it from a gallery. And so there's a bunch of grids that you could choose from. So for example, there's all these geographic graticules, measured grids, reference grids, MGRS grids, etc. And of course, things like scale bars, legends, extent indicators, which is this map up in the top right here, they've always been dynamic. So just to reiterate, why am I showing you all this UI stuff in a Python demo? And that's because in the past, a lot of people wrote code to emulate this dynamic behavior, which is now out of the box. So let's get into the script to create my map book. So here's my script tool. And I just have a few parameters here to like choose my title page. I have a parameter here to choose which map series pages I want to include in my map book. So I'll just choose a few. And then I also have a Boolean parameter whether to include a report or not. So I'll run the script. And while it's running, I'll show you the code. So first off, I'm just collecting parameters from the user. So that's the title page. There, I just finished running. I'll show you that in a second. The map series pages and the report Boolean. Then I just reference some stuff in the project that I'm going to use in my script. For example, here I'm getting the map series from the layout. Here I'm getting the report from the project. Then I just do some string manipulation to get the list of map series pages that the user specified into a format that I could use when I'm exporting the map series. So here I export the map series. And then this part is just all the PDF management stuff. So first off, I specify a kind of like a master PDF document that I'm going to append all my other PDFs to. So here I append the title page, the map series PDF, and then here is where I do my export my report. So first off, I filter the report to just show the records that are in the map series pages that the user specified, and I do that through a SQL query. And then I export the report, and then I append it to the master PDF. And here's the output. So you can see it has title page, a few map series pages, and at the end it has a report. And so you can see that in the output PDF, all the dynamic layout elements updated automatically. So you can see as I move from page to page, all sorts of stuff updates. And then my report has a title page, a report with all the data from the corresponding map series pages, and some statistics. You know, I have a count, the date exported, minimum, maximum year. So when you author the report, you could choose to include all sorts of statistics in your report. Okay, so that's it for the demo. Now I want to briefly point you to a few resources about using arcpy.MP on the server. So I ran that previous script on the desktop in Pro, and I could also share that script as a web tool and run on the web like in ArcGIS Portal or in Web App Builder. And even the report stuff, that all works on server as well. And you may remember that in ArcMap 10X, reporting didn't work on ArcGIS server. So all this stuff in ArcPy, everything works on the server, even if you're running on Linux. So here are a couple resources if you're interested in web tools or geoprocessing services. So first is a link to a help topic. And secondly, a couple of related sessions related to geoprocessing services. And next, just a couple brief words about web map printing, because it relates to the demo I just showed you. A common ArcPy.MP workflow on servers, web map printing, where Python and the JavaScript API and the web app builder all work together. And what is web map printing? Well, it's basically just putting a print button on a web application. But it's more than that. You could get creative with what happens when someone clicks that print button by having it call a Python script. For example, the print button in your web app could call a map series script or a report script similar to what I just showed you. So here's a couple links related to that. So here's a help topic. I have a related session here. Unfortunately, I found out it just happened. And since I kind of suck at time travel, if you have any questions about web map printing, just come talk to me afterwards. And finally, a couple notes about sharing. So one of the things you could do with arcpy.mp is share maps and layers to server, online, and portal. And starting at version 2.2, we introduced the arcpy.sharing module to handle sharing with Python. So I have a link to the help topic here. And new at version 2.3 is the ability to publish map services to a standalone ArcGIS server. In fact, I believe Python is currently the only way to publish to a standalone server at version 2.3. So you'll find a sample for that in the help topic. Okay, so that's it for me for now. Before I hand it back over to Jeff, think about that map series demo I showed and how we utilized dynamic layout elements, for example, dynamic tables. Now imagine if you wanted more control over the dynamic table, for example, the ability to add fields to it or to point it to a different layer in your map. And we don't yet have the ability to do that in arcpy.mp. However, Jeff is now going to talk about some exciting work that we're doing for version 2.4 that will give you access to many of those unexposed properties. So back to you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. So at 2.3, we worked quite extensively on making this available. No plans to have it for 2.3, but it took us quite some time to deliver this final product to you guys. So our plan is to have sim level access at 2.4. So there wasn't a lot of new ArcPy mapping stuff that came out at 2.3 because this was a multi-release project that we're building. But I want to explain ArcPy mapping and how it differs from sim. So ArcPy.MP is what we're calling a coarser-grained API. So it's kind of like a managed API. We're deciding what capabilities we allow you to have. It's never enough, right? I mean, even if we give A, B, and C, you want F and G maybe, right? So that's hard. So every time you want that one extra capability, we got to go to our developer, we got to create issues, we got to design it, we got to test it, we got to do all this stuff. And it's a lot of work to deliver this managed API. The solution, and this has been the solution for the .NET SDK since it was released, is to also have a fallback mechanism, which they're referring to as the SIM, and it has a really fancy term, Cartographic Information Model. For whatever reason, it's called the SIM. It's a lot more than just cartography, and that's what I want to make sure that you leave here understanding that. It's finer-grained access to everything that you can persist in one of our documents, whether that document is an APRX, or it's an LYRX, a layer file, or a MapX, or a PageX. All of this stuff that's in a SIM it's basically all the SIM is are the instructions for how we persist all this information to file. That's all that it is. And it's either in a JSON structure or it's an XML. A APRX is actually a bunch of compressed XML files. A LayerX, a MapX, a PageX, they're all JSON files. You can open them up in Notepad and you can look at their contents and you can see that logical structure of how we're persisting everything to these files. So it's in the long run, although it took us a couple releases, in the long run, we're giving you everything. We are giving you the keys to everything that can be done in one of our documents. So on the stage, I gave an example of Symbology, which is a classic example, right? We've started releasing in our managed API the ability to work with different renderers, but we never even exposed all of the renderers because it's a lot of effort to manually expose all those capabilities. So now, not only can we get to more renderers, we can get to many more properties and capabilities for each renderer because we can get to how that information is stored in these underlying files. And there's a really nice format for how these files are structured and how you can read them, and that structure will help you actually program. And I tried to show that on the plenary where how it's stored in the sim is exactly how you code it using arcpy.MP. So the example there was, we have a renderer and we go to a symbol, and that symbol has a symbol that has a list of layers, and we can get to the layers. And that's what we're doing with the sim. We're going to the renderer, we're going to the symbol, the symbol layers, etc. The other thing, though, is that the sim, and this is really the important point, it's not just cartography, it's not just symbology, it's everything. So here's a request we get all the time. It's very common, you've probably wanted it yourself. You've gone in and you've done ArcPy, you've done sort of analysis, you've called make feature layer. You've created this brand new layer object, but you have no way of going in and controlling the layer visibility. The field visibility. Or maybe you want to change the aliases of those fields. But we don't have a managed API that allows you to do that. But now we kind of do because we're giving you this alternative approach to getting to that information, and that's just simply, we're calling it the sim. So here is arcpy.mapping. This is what you know, right? This is that managed API, and we're going out to a project. We're working with the current project. We're getting a map called map, and we're finding a layer called Great Lakes. And all of this is standard classic arcpy.MP. Now the next step is new. This is where we're going to go to that object and return its entire sim definition. So you'll be able to do this for a lot of the managed objects that we expose in arcpy.MP. So you can go to a layout and return all of its sim definition info. So if you want to get to all the little components of a layout, okay, return that. Here I happen to be working with a layer. It could be a table, it could be a map, it could be a symbol. Then what I'm doing in this case is this is the scenario that I just told you about, right? I want to be able to change the alias name. I want to be able to change the visibility of a field in a layer. So I'm iterating through all of the field descriptions for every field in that feature table. And I'll show you some of this interactively. So I'm simply asking a couple questions here. If field name is equal to object ID, then I want to set visibility to be false. Most people don't want to see object ID. It's an arbitrary value, right? And then here's the other example, right? If the field name is shape_area, just please rename it area. So now inside of Pro, when you open up the attribute table for that layer, you're not going to see object ID, and you're going to see the word area. But make feature never exposed that capability. No managed APIs expose that. Okay, the last thing we do is once we've taken that sim definition, and you don't care about JSON, you don't care about that file out on disk, you're not going to edit those files. Promise me right now, I will not edit those files directly. That's what the API is for. We're we're connecting to those in memory. We're actually not even connecting to the files on disk. We're doing everything through the API. We're calling the object in the application into memory. We're getting its SimDefinition. We're going to make changes to it. And then the last step is to take those changes and push it back to the object. And then automatically that object will just reflect all those changes. Now, what I also mentioned is that we just made available, so today, you can go in and you can start learning about the sim. And I'll show you this page interactively, because you need the tools to understand the structure, because there aren't any published object model diagrams, and I think the JSON structure is the closest to that. But then this repo describes all the documentation on every single sim capability. So this is where all the documentation is, and I'll show you these. So let me skip over to ArcGIS Pro, and I'm going to load a little code here. And I'm going to hit enter. So again, this is ArcMap, slightly different variable names, but I'm going out and I'm finding, I'm getting the first map and I'm getting the first layer. And then now I have my sim variable, and everything that I'm exposing here, you've never seen before. But this is all in that JSON file. And just to go with the example I used earlier, I'm going to look for FeatureTable, and I'll click on that. And then I'll go to the FeatureTable, and I want to get to field descriptions. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a variable, because this is going to return a list, so because you can have many fields, right? And I'm going to go to the first one, and I can go fd dot field name and hit enter, right? And that's object ID, the first field. But notice now with fd dot, look at, I can highlight. I can actually highlight that field in the application if I want. I can set whether it's visible. I can set its alias, number format. I can do all these things now using all that stuff that gets stored in when we save a project. What I'm going to do now is come back to the slide and just click on this link. So if we go to developers.arcgis.com/documentation, and we go all the way to the bottom here, oh, not quite to the bottom, but right here under Platform Technology, we have this new option called Cartographic Information Model Sim Specification. I'm going to click on it. And basically, this is a repo. So you can download this entire thing, or you can just view it interactively here. And we can see that there's some description, a lot of explanation for how everything's persisted and stored. But really, basically, you start with the document. So there are a couple of tricks that we're going to teach you, and we'll provide help samples and more videos. But you fundamentally start with the document. So let's say that you have a layer and you want to do something to it. Well, you can either go into the APRX and you can do some funny stuff with the XML and you can figure it out that way. Or what I recommend is you just kind of do all the modifications that you ultimately want to get to. Let's say that you want to change the render and you want to change all these properties or do whatever, and this is the end result that I want. All I would do is I would save that layer out as a layer file and then open it up in Notepad and look at all of those properties that you changed. And so now you know what to do with the sim to change those properties. You know what their names are, you know what their values are, and it makes it a little easy. So that's what I'm trying to show you here, is that in order to be successful with that ... notation, you have to kind of figure out where to look. So you can go to this cartographic information model, and that's what I'm going to show you right now. So let's just go to sim layer document. And I know to click the SimDefinition because there are many different document types. So this is a long page. but I'm at the sim layer document, and I'm going to go to its definition. And these are all the things that you can get to. It's just absolutely incredible. So when I was experimenting and I saw FeatureTable as one of my dot options, well, let me just do a Control F and do a search on FeatureTable. Oh, there it is. So what does the FeatureTable do? Oh, it exposes all these things. Now we're drilled in far enough where you're starting to see the metadata, right? What all the different capabilities are. And let's see. Just the FeatureTable. And I want to go to field descriptions. And this is where I can see all the different things that I can change, like alias and visibility, etc. But, you know, it's kind of a flattened list. So this isn't necessarily easy for you to follow unless you know what the names are. So you're going to be experimenting in the Python window with your dot options, or you can go into the LYRX or the MapX or the PageX for your layout, and you can look at the structure. So this is a sim layer document. This is an entry point for, you know, where you change things. And there's just so much information here. You know, I could scroll for a while. I'm going to do Control F, and maybe I'm going to do a search on FeatureTable. Find next. And this is where I'm seeing that same dot syntax. I have my FeatureTable. It has field descriptions. It returns a list, right? And then once I retrieve an item from that list, then I can get to things like alias and field name and visibility. So this is telling me what I need to type. And when you work with the sim, I have to say this up front too, is you have to be careful. So think of the user interface. When you do things in the user interface, certain options are blocked. So if I select this option, I can't set that option. And our managed application protects you from making those mistakes. When we expose this to you, you can make those mistakes. You can set A and B, and maybe they conflict with one another, so who knows if you're going to get A or B, where the UI wouldn't allow you to do that. So, you know, these are things that you're going to have to read up on and understand as a developer, and an end application that you're building, you're going to need to make sure that you set things appropriately. But this will allow us to make everything available to you now, so you don't have to wait for us anymore to add that one extra function you've been asking for. I mean, we will continue to grow. So what I want to do is go back to Pro, and I'm going to dock this window. And let me just show you something else. I'm going to execute this code. And what this code is doing is it's modifying field descriptions. I'm modifying layout elements. So I'm going in and I'm modifying the extent indicator. I'm modifying grid line intervals and grid line symbols, headers in a table, etc. So I'm just going to close this, minimize this. Let me bring this forward. And so here we have kind of like a before and after. So this map isn't going to change, this layout isn't going to change, and this one is going to change. So I'm going to execute all that code just simply by loading it and hit enter. So what I've done is, just very quickly, as you can see, I changed my grid intervals. I actually went in and I started modifying the symbology and the colors of the individual labels, and I did things differently on the north and south axes than I did on the east and west. That's how much granular control that we have. I modified the extent rectangle symbol. And these are all things you can't do with ArcPy mapping. I improved upon the legend, which currently didn't fit in the space given, and I modified it. And then I went into the table, and I actually went in and I changed all the formatting of the headers. And there wasn't a lot of code there. This is as easy as ArcPy MP. ArcPy MP was never really a difficult scripting environment. We're just giving you that same logic. We're just giving you another way of getting to those extra features. And I think that's all I want to show. So to you, Jeff.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, so building upon what Jeff just demoed there, I'm going to show some sim stuff as well. So you remember in my previous demo, I showed how to create a map book that was based on the arcpy.mapping map series class. Now I'll demonstrate how to make a time map book, meaning for each time slice of a time-enabled layer, I'll create a map series page, and then I'll stitch them all together, all the time slice PDFs together into a map book. Now, ArcGIS doesn't have a concept of a time-based map series yet, although that is something we're toying with for the future. Also, arcpy.mapping doesn't have any time-enabled classes or functions yet either. So since we haven't yet implemented time in ArcPy, we could utilize the sim module. So we could dig into the sim and access those time properties. So let me show you my project that I'm going to work with. So what I have here is time-enabled historical data for Tokyo and Beijing that shows how the city boundaries have changed over time. And these map frames both have time-enabled layers on them. So I'll activate this map frame here and go to the properties of the Tokyo layer. And you can see that I have time enabled on it. You could also see that I have the time slider for the map. And then on the ribbon, I have the map time ribbon. And this has all the information I need to create a time map book. For example, it has the start time, the step interval, the units, the number of steps. So I'll use ArcPy to access those properties. And also, like in my previous demo, I'm going to utilize dynamic text that will automatically update every time the time changes. So first off, I have this dynamic text element here, which is showing me map frame time, and I have it formatted to just show me the year. And I'm also using dynamic table statistics again, where for this layer, for the visible features in the map frame, I am going to sum this area field. Okay, so let's look at the script that will create my time map book. So here's my script tool. I'll just hit edit here to open up the script. First off is similar to the other demo. I'm just creating a master PDF file, and that'll be the PDF that has all the time slice PDFs appended to it. And then I just reference the project, the layout, the map. And then here, this is where I get the sim for the map. And then next, I access the sim time properties. And those are the same properties that I showed you in the time ribbon. So again, as Jeff was saying, how do I know which properties to read? Like how did I find out that I had to use these properties since we don't have an object model? And well, what I did is I created a mapx file for the map. Then I renamed it .json, and I opened it in Notepad++.
And I'm just going to state,
Sure.
You don't have to rename it. If you can open up an LYRX, a MapX in Notepad, having a JSON extension just has some default symbology, so it renders better.
Nicer, yeah. And there's lots of other ways to view JSON as well. There's online JSON viewers, standalone JSON viewers, so that you can see them in an element tree. So here's my JSON file, and let me just open up the script as well. So what I need first is I need to get the step interval value. And under the time slider settings, I can see my step interval value. I also need the step interval units, and I can see that here. That's the years. There's the step count. So that's all the stuff that I'm using in my Python script. So given that information, I can now make my time map book. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to loop through the step count. So that's all the time steps. I'm going to specify start and end times. And then, now that I have the start and end times, I'm going to get the layout sim now. From the layout sim, I'm going to get the map frame. And then for the map frame's view, I'm going to set the start and end times. And that's for Tokyo. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the Beijing map frame. Once I've set the start and end times for the map frame, I'm going to commit that to the layout. So I'm using the set sim. So that'll write to the layout. So now my layout's going to update. And I'm going to export the layout to PDF for that particular time slice. And then I'm going to append that time slice PDF to the master PDF. And I'm doing this all in a loop. So it's going to just keep looping through for all those time steps. And then finally, I save the PDF, and then I just open it. So I'll just run the script right now. Run it. Should be pretty quick. So just for the sake of time, I only have 4 time steps. And now here's the output PDF that my script made. And you can see that the time changes for each time slice. And then also notice the text, the dynamic text automatically updated. I didn't have to actually write any code for that. So my timestamp and my area field. And that's it. So that's the end of my demo. And I think we're done. Yeah. And a reminder to fill out, oh, what happened? The survey on the survey app. And I think we're going to take questions now.
Yes. Are there any questions? Yes? Is everything the sim has access to read-write? The JSON file is read-write, but will there be any sort of blocking that prevents you from doing that? And I don't have a good example for you right now, so I'm not quite sure how to answer that question. And that goes back to what I had said previously, though, where there are things that you can do wrong with the sim, right? And that's why this is the group of people we wanted to present this to. We don't know how much we'll present this at the user conference yet. But you know, the other thing that Jeff reminded me of is when we created arcpy mapping, ArcMap was pretty solid. ArcPy mapping came a long time after ArcMap was already there. And one of the struggles that we have with trying to release this managed API is keeping up with all the changes that are going into Pro. There's no way we can keep up. It's just impossible. And so this sim is that way. I don't know if you noticed in one of the field descriptions that we looked at, it had said that the property was read-only. So I don't know, I'll have to test that. If I try and set that value, will it just get blocked? Because there are some safety mechanisms built into the sim. I just can't describe it to you. Good question, though. Right here? So you're, okay, so the question was, you're currently using ArcPy mapping, that's what everyone's using right now, and then you want to extend those capabilities using the sim, and you're wondering if there'll be a performance issue? Yes, so right, okay, so the question is, are you getting better performance from the sim than with the managed API? I can't answer that. I can't imagine there being a significant difference at all. I don't know how they would be different, maybe nanoseconds. I don't know, we've not done that sort of performance analysis.
That's a good question.
But it is a very good question. So really, the other question to that though is, can I just bypass ArcPy mapping and just go right to the sim? Why not? That's what I actually did during the plenary, because remember there's 2 layers to that polygon fill. And the polygon fill I can actually modify using ArcPy mapping, but that outline and all those dashed properties, etc., I couldn't. So I went to that second layer and I modified all the dashed lines and changed all the colors and did whatever, but at the same time, while I was there, I just grabbed the simple fill and I changed the color to brown and transparent. I could have done that using ArcPy MP, but do I want that redundancy? That's completely up to you. Great question. You'll have to manage that, because why not just skip right to it through the sim? Okay, another, you guys are, wow. Great question. So can we use the sim to create new objects? Because currently in ArcPy mapping, we can't create new objects with the exception of text elements and graphic elements, because we can clone existing elements and then modify them. So the answer is yes. And I did that in the plenary when I inserted dashed lines. Those dashed lines didn't exist already for that renderer, for that symbol. And I inserted those dashed lines. We don't know if we're going to document that yet. It's really interesting. And not that we don't want you to know. It's not that we don't want you to know. It's how did we know how to do that? Because we know how the black box works. We know how our engine works and how we read that JSON, but how would you have known by browsing through this JSON file, because you wouldn't have seen dashed lines in that original file, right? If you looked at the result, you would have seen that dashed lines were inserted, but how did you know what sim objects to call to create that? And that's where that sim spec is so long and so deep, we have to maybe post 2.4, when we have time to complete all our documentation, we can give you those tricks. But the answer is right now you can do it. Good luck. And I'm just trying to be funny here. It will be doable, but that's something we want to do in the managed API as well. So ArcPy mapping isn't dead. Okay, it really isn't, because we don't want everyone tweaking with the sim. What's so awesome about ArcPy MP is it's great for GIS analysts that want to do basic scripting. But I don't want to have to tell you to learn Visual Studio because you can't get to field aliases for a feature table, right? That's not fair either. I mean, the .NET folks have the keys to this sim kingdom. We want to give you those same keys. We're not going to tell you to go to another platform so you can do something so basic. So we're going to continue to manage this API, but we're also going to give you the sim. Another great question? Is it a great question? Right, so the question is, can we turn off the sim so someone can't accidentally reference a layer object using arcpy.mp or a map object like Jeff showed, and they're wondering, well, what's this get sim? Well, I'm going to get the sim, and what's the answer? The quick answer is no. We haven't even thought about turning it off. We thought we were doing a good thing by turning it on. But I understand your point. But the thing is I think it's so advanced, and unless you know exactly how to navigate those JSON structures, and you got to be somewhat advanced and you got to be a little bit educated to even do anything with it. I don't think you'd get an accidental, because even you as a professional Python developer could do something wrong. Yes, it's a great movie. Jurassic Park, yes, got it. Good comment. We'll think about that and bring that back to the team. Right now, I can't think of a way of turning it off. Another one right there. Another great question. So the geoprocessing team has been amazing over the years at making code just always work. And they've always been very, very proud of that until Jeff and I came along and arcpy.mapping had to completely change because, well, they changed the architecture on us. But no, things just never broke in Python with GP. But now we're dealing with the sim. And are there sim changes? And the answer is there are. Mostly there are additions to the sim, but sometimes as we go from one major release to another major release, that's when there will be sim changes. And that's when actually your Python code can break. So we can be introducing code breaking changes from major release to major release. But wait, there's some hope. We are developers. Jeff and I just kind of test the stuff. They're going to have a sim version manager so that if you're running code that was written for, let's say, 2.3, and then you try and run it against, let's say, 3.1, we'll use the 2x sim, not the 3x sim. So that's something that we've taken into consideration. Obviously, this is our first release, and so we won't really know until we get into the 3x, until we make sure that works. I mean, obviously, we have ways of testing it internally, but you won't know until 3x comes out. Yeah. Question? Can you repeat that again? I don't know if I understand your question.
The four loops, the time series were cut short for the sake of presenting time today. For real life, is it possible to generate those pages in parallel so that they're not as time consuming?
You want to get that? Oh, so parallel export, like multiple pages at the same time. I can't answer that. We can talk to the print and export folks, at the showcase. We're just calling their tools, right? So we'd have to find out from them if that's possible. So I don't know the answer to that, but it's still a great question. Anyone else? Well, thank you, and if you have questions you want to ask us individually, we'll be here for a while, and then we'll be over at the showcase after. So thank you very much.